Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Empower. Welcome to Block 2. I hope your first session was excellent. I hope it was time well spent. In this session, we'll be doing an introduction to formulas. Now, folks are just piling in at the moment, so I'm not going to get started in earnest right away. But for those who are here, who can hear me, I'm glad you're here. Nice to see you. I'm going to see if I'm able to pull up the attendee list and see who's here so far. Oh, wow, we got dozens of folks already. Oh, well, feel free to say hey in the chat. Keep in mind, we have a chat and a Q&A. And I'm not alone in the effort to answer your questions. So you'll be hearing from other folks on the team here. Beth, Brian, Jennifer. I'm excited for this course. I'm excited that you're here. And one thing is in the attendee chat, I can't see your names. I just see numbers. So normally I like to call out names and say, hey, but these are like 9-digit numbers. So I won't be able to rattle those off super easily. But welcome. It's nice to see you here. Hope you've had a good time so far at Empower. Hope the keynote was exciting earlier today. Thrilled to hear about partnership with Lucid. Been using that tool for a while, so it's about time. All right. Some folks been waiting for this course, looking forward to it. Awesome. While we wait for folks to get in, we'll get started in another minute here. Just want to say that this is an introduction to formulas. That's what we're going to go over. So I'll advance the slide here so that you can see you're in the right place. This is an introduction to formulas. It's all about formula fields. If you have never created a formula field before, or maybe you've created some, but you're still not totally sure what's going on, then I'm here to help out. If you already know formulas pretty well, this might be some review for you. And one way to think about this is you can always watch the way that I teach it. If you're trying to teach some other builders that you work with or people you want to start building with you. And otherwise, if this isn't quite what you're looking for, there's tons of other sessions. You're more than welcome to hop around. This is being recorded. You'll be able to access it at any time. So welcome to Intro to Formulas. One thing to keep in mind too is that there's a lot of you here in the audience, and you may remember me for some trainings. I've been doing the training thing for a little while here. I like to answer questions. I like to have a dialogue. There's more of you here than I'm typically used to. So answering all of your questions and keeping up that dialogue might be a bit of a challenge for me today. But I'm really happy to see folks already saying hi in the chat, saying where you're from. We've got 2 folks from North Texas. It's a big state, so I don't know if you're neighbors necessarily, but glad you found each other. And someone from Colorado. I'm coming in broadcasting live from Los Angeles, the Los Angeles office, which is just my home office. We don't have a Los Angeles office yet. Is that 3 North Texas? My goodness. Oh, and NorCal represented. All right, so we've got some good variety in California. That sounds good, Beth. Yeah, Q&A for the true questions and chat for introducing ourselves. It's inevitable that we'll see chatter in both areas. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat itself. My team's going to look at the Q&A and let me know if I need to slow down or stop or repeat something. So, yes, Cali sunshine in the building. I've blocked it off as much as possible so that I have good lighting here, but it's trying to shine through. So anyway, I've spent 5 minutes here with a little bit of buying time for folks who wanted to join. I think it's time to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Intro to Formulas. My name is Benjamin Buday. I'll be your presenter today. It's really nice to have you here at Empower. I hope you've enjoyed your time so far. I'm joined by my team of panelists, Beth and Brian and Jennifer. They're here. They're occupying the chat and the Q&A, though they know they can unmute if they need to at any time, if they need to get my attention. And just a few housekeeping items before we get into this. So, well, this isn't a housekeeping item, but hi, that's me. My name is Benjamin. I've been here for a while. I'm celebrating 8 years at Quickbase next month. So thanks for having me. I haven't been a trainer the whole time, but I've been training for almost 4 years now, and I love it. So I'm glad that you're here, and I'm happy to be training you today. Some housekeeping items. You're using the On24 platform. So it's new for all of us. We've had a little bit of time to practice with it, but if you're looking around trying to figure out how to put the slideshow in the right spot, how to find the chat, how to see me on video here, Feel free to use the Q&A for that. You can also hop into the attendee chat if you like. Your fellow attendees might be able to help direct you. But all of this stuff is relatively customizable, so you'll be able to resize things as necessary. There can be some of a delay at times. We're all just using the internet as best we can. So you may notice a bit of a sync delay between what I'm saying and me on screen. Let me know if that becomes too distracting. I'm not sure what I can do about it, but I can slow down a little bit. And as we get into Quickbase itself and into the slideshow, let me know if I can take a slower pace or if I can zoom in so that you can see my screen a bit better. With that in mind, let me close down a few things of my own here so I can see everything. Oh, thank you. Excellent trainer. Love my sessions. I love having you here. So today, for an introduction to formulas, this is going to be a workshop. Now, I don't know what you're doing on your side of the screen. If you just want to watch, that's totally fine. If you want to watch and knit, watch and pet your cat, that's totally fine. But if you want to watch and build along with me to get a feel for what I'm going to teach you today, it's always a great way to learn. And my suggestion would be to create a Builder account if you have not done that already. So to do that, all you need to do is go to quickbase.com/builder-program. Now, that doesn't necessarily flow right off the tongue, so I'm going to share that in the chat. You can create your own Builder account. I would use a personal email address for that so you keep it separate from your corporate account. Then go check that email address's inbox, verify your account, register it, and you can build along with me. Keep in mind, we're going to be going at a certain pace so that we can get all the stuff covered that I'm hoping to get covered today. I'll try to answer your questions as best as possible. The team here will try as well. If we can't answer your question, my apologies. We will share later with you, though, a Slack channel where you can come back and ask all the questions that you didn't get answers to. And you'll have the recording available later on. So if you would rather just watch for the first time and then go, I do want to try some of that stuff, well, you'll be able to. With that in mind, let's talk about the learning goals that I've set for us today. So first, for an introduction to formulas, I want you to feel comfortable understanding the difference between formula fields and manual entry fields. Second, I'm hoping that you'll feel comfortable by the end of the session recognizing where formula fields can be used to simplify data entry and improve accuracy. And finally, I'm hoping that at the end of the session, you'll feel comfortable being able to create basic formulas so that you can perform calculations and create formulas for transforming text. With that in mind, here's the agenda for today. First, I'm going to introduce just a very basic story and use case. Everyone, I think, loves a good narrative, so we have a good story for us to be able to solve for, so we know why we're doing what we're doing today. Then we'll talk about what are formulas. There's a good chance you've heard of them. If you're here, then there's some reason that brought you here, and it's probably because you've heard of them before. Maybe you've used them. Maybe you haven't, but you're trying to. Maybe you've inherited an app, and it uses formula fields, and you don't want to break them. So you're here to see how you can demystify them. And by the way, if any of those little scenarios describe your situation, I'd love to hear that in the chat. Feel free to let me know why you are here. Then we'll talk about why formulas are useful. So we'll just make it very clear what the benefit of formula fields are and why you would use them. Then we'll create some formulas. We'll talk about what goes into creating them. And then we'll have our build along workshop where we're going to solve a few different things. We're going to learn how to do some text concatenation. We're going to learn how to do some text formatting. We're going to learn how to calculate time elapsed between dates. We're going to calculate some math. And we're going to assess using an if, then, else conditional function. So, yep, I see someone in chat terrified of breaking them. Hey, it's okay. Once a formula works right, it works right. So if you mess it up the first time, don't worry. When you fix it, the data's all back there. So, by the way, we do this training on a fairly regular basis as well. This is a special Empower version. But if you're concerned about only having Empower as your time to be able to participate in this session, well, I've got some good news for you. We do this session on the regular. So I'm going to share this with you in the chat. You can join my team of trainers using that link there. We'll be doing this training, a very similar one anyway, next month. So a lot of folks tend to come back over and over, double dip, triple dip, feel free to come in. We're always trying to do some new things, so feel free to join us in the following months for more formula work. Now, if you were with us for the keynote earlier, you heard a lot about automating. That's the big word of, I'd say the year, but really the past decade. And formula fields are a great way to dip your toes into automating using Quickbase. There are several features that allow you to basically get work done automatically, whether those are dynamic form rules, custom data rules. Formulas are a great place to get started with that too. So let's talk about the story and use case that I've got for us outlined today, and then let's learn about formulas and solve some challenges. So first, courtesy of my good friend and fellow trainer, Daniel Callahan, here is a story and use case. So as a former resident of Cape Cod, this is his idea of a use case. Cape Cod Pet Care, they're a fictional company using Quickbase. They do pet care like sitting, and they're also a veterinarian office. They use Quickbase, and they're ready to level up. They have an app they've been using for a bit. They think they can do more with it. So they're going to investigate ways to save themselves some time and either reduce or outright remove redundant data entry. So if that sounds like stuff that you want to do, save time, reduce or eliminate redundant data entry altogether, improve accuracy, then you're not too different than this Cape Cod Pet Care company. So first, one thing they want to do, they want to capture first name, last name, and the full name of each client for various reasons, for data reasons. But the data entry is redundant, and it can lead to incomplete or incorrect entries. Next, vaccinations must be current within 2 years for any pet in order for them to do pet sitting. If a pet is not within that vaccination time range, if it's been more than 2 years, they will not take the pet in for sitting or an overnight. Thing is that they only track the last vaccination date. So it's some basic math, but they have to do it in their head every time to just look and see, was that more than 2 years ago? Employees write a summary of each pet's visit after the pet has been picked up. Now, these summaries can be rather long if there's a lot to write about. So they would like to be able to look through a list of visits so they can find certain notes and just see quick abbreviations of these much longer write-ups. So if you've ever wanted to shorten a really long notes or description field, a formula field might be the answer. And the company is adding up subtotals and discounts and totals by hand when they are creating these invoices. And that, well, it's math. And if you're doing it by hand, it can lead to errors and inaccuracy. So they like to make sure that all of that is absolutely accurate. Should we have time, it might be cool to start providing discounts for milestone visits, like a first visit, a 10th visit. So they're interested to see if there's an automated way to do that without having to search through the system and say, oh, yes, this is your 10th visit. So does that sound good? Let's get into it. So what are formulas? For the uninitiated, what are formulas? So a formula field is just simply a field that gets its value using logic that you design instead of getting its value from direct user input. Here's some examples. If you wanted to perform calculations, you might have things like a subtotal. And before you actually get the total, you need to add the subtotal to something like the tax amount. Now, all of these fields, if you know what the tax is, you could go ahead and pull out a calculator and do the necessary calculations to multiply the subtotal by the tax to get the tax amount. But formula fields allow you to design the logic to just do this automatically. So you can say the tax amount is going to be equal to the subtotal times the tax. And then the total, well, don't make me add the subtotal to the tax amount. Quickbase, you do it yourself. Formula fields can perform basic and complex calculations for us. Formula fields can also do things like flagging records. So while you might think of formula fields as just purely numeric calculating, they can do more than just that. They can do some sort of checking and validation. So here's an example. Imagine you have a field called ideal due date, and you have a field called status. Now take a look at this slide here. That ideal due date was back in November, and the status is planned. Now, in my mind, that means that whatever this record is because the status doesn't say done or complete or completed, this thing is still open. And guess what? It's overdue. So that checkbox there where it says overdue, that is a formula checkbox. And it's got the logic, the intelligence to know that it's going to look at whatever's in the ideal due date for a record and say, okay, is that due date in the past? Yes. Is the status anything except for completed? Yes. Okay, then this is overdue. And it checks the box automatically for you. Now, you could always take this another step further and say, when they do actually mark this as completed, we want another checkbox to say that it was completed after it was due. It may no longer be overdue because it's done, but we want to know that it was done and submitted after its due date. So my scratching any itches here is this stuff that folks have wanted to do before. So I'm going to show you how to do some of these things. You can also use formulas for something like converting data. So here's an example, literally from one of my personal apps. I take a lot of notes. And with these notes, when I'm looking through my previous journal entries, if you will, sometimes I just want to see a quick summary of that. So this is just a small snippet of my notes, but to make it even smaller, I can introduce a formula field called notes shortened for reports that just simply takes the first sentence of the notes. That way I know it's on me to have a good summarizing sentence at the beginning of my notes so that future me can look through my notes very quickly and basically to find what I want to look for, and then I can drill in and see the larger description there. What do you think of that? Is that something you're interested in? If so, stick around. I'm going to show you how to do these things. So maybe you've already kind of come to understand why these formulas could be useful just based on how I've described them. Or maybe you've inherited an app that's already using formulas and you don't really need to be told why formulas are useful. But just to be clear about why they're useful, I just want to walk through the benefits that I'm going to show you today. One benefit is guaranteeing accuracy in calculations. So as long as you create your formulas correctly, doing the math correctly, you'll always have accurate math done for you. And another reason is to reduce and eliminate redundant data entry. Two big benefits, not the only benefits, but two big benefits. Other benefits include being able to automate, being able to sequence, being able to do data validation. For guaranteeing accuracy in calculations, let's go back to those numeric examples I gave earlier. With something like tax amount, we're telling it behind the scenes, here's your logic tax amount formula field. You're just simply going to be taking this subtotal times the tax. And then the total field, well, here's your logic. You're going to take the subtotal and you're going to add the tax amount. So these formula fields can also reference each other. With that other example I showed you of the overdue flag, here's what the formula looks like behind the scenes. And what it's doing is it's going through the logic so that you don't have to go through yourself and check boxes next to things that are overdue. And while that might look like a bunch of gobbledygook right now, we're going to dig into this kind of formula so you can understand how it works. And you'll find that this just allows you to just very simply reduce and eliminate the redundant task of having to go in and say, this is overdue, this is overdue, this is overdue. So let's get into creating formulas. And of course, just to do a quick check, team, let me know, am I synced right now? Are you still able to see and hear me? There's a lot of quiet coming from that end, so I just want to make sure. Perfect, great. Okay, so creating formulas. Let's talk about how they work. First, let's talk about expressions and operators. So you're going to see some square brackets in the formulas that I show you coming up. Square brackets are for calling fields. Oh, thank you, attendees. I just got like a dozen yeses. Thank you. So square brackets are for calling other fields and referencing other fields. Quotes are for text or for literal strings when you're not trying to have your formula interpret, but to literally factor in a string of text. The ampersand is used to string values together or to string expressions together. Parentheses are for functions such as if or left, right, and for order of operations, the whole PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, remember that? And, as well as or, are for introducing multiple conditions, plus, minus, the asterisk for multiplication, the forward slash for divide, greater than, less than, equals to are operators. And 2 forward slashes is for commenting. So you don't have to remember this all, but we're going to walk through pretty much all of these in our workshop today. And then you have this idea of functions. Oh, man. So functions allow you to do all sorts of data transformation, converting, calculation, so much stuff. Let's look at a few examples. For a conditional assessment, you could use an if function, or a case function, or a contains function. And what you end up doing is putting in some additional expressions and or field references within the parentheses to assess something like, if the status is equal to completed, then I want the formula to produce this result. Case is like a bigger if function, and contains can look through another field for specific values and return a yes or a no if that value is present. Type conversion. There's more that I could list, but I don't have enough real estate on my screen to show you. So type conversions allow you to turn things into text, turn things into dates, turn things into numbers, into users. So if you're, for example, ingesting data from another source, maybe it's from a spreadsheet, maybe it's from another system, and you don't have control over what type of data that is, you might need to convert it so that you can use it in a different way. Well, these expressions, these functions, I should say, can help you do that. Numeric functions, like getting averages, finding a maximum, doing a sum, doing a minimum. Boolean, like greater than, less than, equal to, not equal to. Text functions, like looking to the left of a certain delimiter, to the right of a certain delimiter. Date functions, finding the day of week of a specific date. So you might want to look at any specific date and say, what day of the week is that? That function would be able to extract that and tell you. So all sorts of really cool solutions hidden within the functions of your formula fields. So let's solve some challenges. Let's learn by doing, because I could walk you through the manual all day and teach you that way, but what better way than to see it in action? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to grab a sample app from the Quickbase Exchange. Now, if you're using a builder account, you're going to look for something like what you see on the left here. From your My Apps page, you'll look for, in the lower right, the word Exchange. If you're using your corporate account, however, provided by your company, from the My Apps page, you're going to look to the upper right, and you're going to look for Explore Sample Apps. My team is here to help you out. If you are having any challenges with that, just let us know. Of course, if you just want to watch, that's totally fine too. You can always come back later and build along if you say, hey, that was really keen. I want to try that myself. The app you're looking for, in retrospect, this image might be a little small, but the app that you're looking for is called this, Training Companion - Intro to Formulas. Now, I would give you the link if I could. The thing is that we all have different URLs with our Quickbase accounts. So my link is not going to be very helpful for you. But hop into the Exchange there and search for that, although I put a period at the end of it. Ignore the period. There's no punctuation there. So go ahead and just do Training Companion, Intro to Formulas, and you'll find that app there. So here's how you do that. From your Builder account, you're going to look over to the right. In the lower right, you're going to have Exchange as an option within your Learning and Help. Once you click Exchange, this window opens here. And in the upper left, you can click in the Search for an App input box, and you can look for Training Companion - Intro to Formulas. You should see only one app here. 12 people have already acquired it since I last checked 30 minutes ago. Excellent. You can click Get This App. This will put it into your account. You can call it whatever you like. I would say if you're going to be grabbing apps throughout the week of Empower, maybe just call this Intro to Formulas. You could call it Empower 2021, Intro to Formulas, whatever you want to do. You can always adjust that later. Click Create, and let's take a peek through the app. I'm also going to make sure that the sharing is turned on here. Let me try that again. I thought I already clicked it. I'm going to turn it off and turn it back on. So I want to share this screen, but you don't need to see my On24 panel. You just need to see my Apps page. So from the My Apps page, again, you're going to look in the lower right. You're going to look for Exchange. If you're using your corporate account, again, you won't see that. Instead, you'll see a button in the upper right that says Explore Sample Apps. When you head into either one of those areas, you're going to search for Training Companion Intro to Formulas. So I'm rocking 2 monitors here. I'm going to try to do my best to keep an eye on the chat as well. Team, feel free to come off of mute if you need to get my attention on something and I'm not paying attention to it. But once you find that app, you can click Get This App and then click Create to add it to your account. Your screen will reload and it will take you to the app itself, and this is what it looks like. Now, there's already a bunch of structure created, already a bunch of data added. I can't really take all the time in the world to show you the entire app, and you probably wouldn't like that anyway, because there's a bunch to see. But let me walk you through the highlights. So some of the things that we're going to focus on today revolve around these services that Cape Cod Pet Care offers. And if you look at the services table up at the top, you will see that there are 2 services when you land on that services table. There's a service for overnights, and there's a service for pet sitting. Just 2 simple little line items. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here to make sure that that's very clear on the screen. Now, overnights are a $300 flat rate. Pet sitting is $20 an hour for daytime sitting. What this app does is it allows us to track the clients as if it's a customer relationship management system, CRM, track their pets, and then basically create visit records. Those are essentially invoices too, but visit records for when a pet is going to be taking in one of these services. And if you wanted to see what the structure of this app looks like, I'll just take you into the settings. You don't have to follow me here, but you can click the settings here in the upper left. And I'm going to click on the structure option on the left, just to show you how this app is built. I feel like if I don't, you might be curious what tables and relationships there are. So here's how it works. We've got, let me close this down here. We've got a clients table. Clients can have many pets. Pets can have many visits, and services can have many visits. Bonus points if you can tell me what kind of relationship setup that is. There's a session about it tomorrow. So what these technicians and sitters would be doing is when a client brings a pet in, they would look at the pet record, go ahead and click Add Visit, and then choose the related service so that they can log the visit. And then when they're done with the visit and the pet is picked up, they can go ahead and tabulate the number of hours if it was a pet sitting, or just the number of overnight nights, and generate that invoice. And yes, that is a many-to-many relationship. Good answer. So that's what this app looks like. With that in mind, I'm going to click out of here by clicking Exit, and I'm going to bring us back to the PowerPoint. So what you can do in On24 is rearrange your windows, if you will, your panels here. Go ahead and look at the slides, because what I'm going to do is bring us to the Build Along Workshop exercise number 1 slide. Let me know if you can't see that. You may just need to move some things around. But the first thing we're going to do is look at exercise number 1. So first problem, we're going to be creating a formula field, a formula text field specifically, to concatenate 2 fields. And here's why. When you're ready, go ahead and head to your clients table, or you can just watch me again. But to your clients table here, we have 3 fields. We have a first name field, a last name field, and a full name field. So what this means is that when we take in a new client, we need to enter the first name and the last name so we can do things like alphabetizing by last name. But when we want to reference a full name all as one entity, we have to enter their full name in again. Not the biggest deal, but ideally we have hundreds and hundreds of clients, and it would be nice to ensure some accuracy so that we don't have something like this. Look at this record for Amy Rodriguez, for example. The last name and then the full name don't match. For Gabby here, that's also incorrect. So we're going to create a formula field that knows to take the first name value and add it to the last name value. Now, I like to compare these workshops to cooking classes. You may not necessarily get the entire picture of what we're about to do, but I'm going to guide you through it, and then we're going to retrospect on what we just did. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to learn and understand how to concatenate using field references and operators. The benefit being that we're not going to need to copy and paste or type in the full name after having entered first and last. And we're going to be able to sort by first name and last name if we ever need to, and we'll still be able to use the full name for things like drop downs and record titles and stuff like that. So we'll be able to use the full name when we need it, and we'll be able to isolate the first name and last name still and guarantee 100% accuracy as long as you type in the name correctly at least once. So let's do it. You can focus on the screen share part here. We're going to go into the client's settings, and we're going to add a new field. So there are a lot of different ways to add a new field. We could technically change the existing full name field, but I like to create, generally, if I'm testing, a new field so I don't overwrite anything. So I'm going to go into the settings by clicking the gear on the left. From the settings, I'm going to look to the left. I'm going to zoom out for a moment here so you can see the full scope of the settings page. You're going to look for fields on the left. So again, you're in the clients table, and if you just need a reminder of where you are, look in the upper left, confirm that you're on client settings. Okay, and then where it says fields, you can either click fields or you can click new above fields. Either way, you're going to be brought to this dialog here. If you made it to the fields screen, you have new fields in the upper right if you needed to click that. But otherwise, you'll be brought right here. And for this field label, let's call it full name, and then use parentheses to say something like, oh, sorry, let me try that again. Formula. Now, you'll probably change the name later on if you decide that this is a field you want to keep using, but it's just good to have that information there as you're testing. To the right, you're going to choose the type formula text. So you're going to scroll all the way down below the break in the options. Is this anybody's first time building a formula field? I'm pretty curious about that. You're going to choose formula text. And then you're going to click add. All right, a bunch of yeses. All right, excellent, and a no. Okay, this is not somebody's first rodeo here, but for a lot of folks it is. So like you've seen with other fields, this adds that field to the bottom of your list here. So I have full name formula here. We're going to click on full name formula so that we can go and design the formula. Now, when you click on a field's name when you're in the settings, it takes you into the properties. Maybe you've been here before, maybe you haven't, but this is where you can do things like change the label. You can add comments. You see that tab at the upper left there for yourself and for other administrators to just understand behind the scenes. What does this field do? Who created it and when? You can also make sure that that field has only unique values, or you can require it when it's not a formula field. What we're going to do is we're going to look below the formula text field options section heading. So you see that below basics, you've got this word formula and then a large input box. Now what I want you to do is take your cursor, put it into the input box and left click. You're going to see a drop down up here, either below or to the right. It just depends on how zoomed in you are. So did it appear down below or to the right for you? For me, it appeared down below, like that. But if I'm zoomed out, it's going to appear over to the right. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to use field references and operators in order to string together the first name and the last name. So you're going to find that drop down that says choose fields and functions. So you can do a lot of formula building just from this, but you'll still need to choose your operators by hand. We're going to choose fields and functions, and we're going to find the first name field. See that in the list there? So you click on the drop down and you choose first name. Then when you do that, that puts first name into your formula and it puts it in square brackets. So what that means is that on every record where this formula field is, we're going to go ahead and take whatever value we see in the first name field. So that's step one. The next thing you're going to do, make sure your cursor's at the end of the formula where it says first name, just like mine, blinking like that. You're going to choose a field again from that dropdown, and this time you're going to choose last name. Now, interesting, when I did this, that turned yellow, and it gave me some kind of technical explanation for why there's a warning here. If anyone wants to hazard a guess as to why this is trying to get our attention, go ahead and let me know. But so far, what we're telling the formula field is that we care about the first name of the client and the last name of the client. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. Your computer needs to update notification because this is not a good time for that. Now, the reason it's giving you this yellow warning here is that it doesn't understand what you want to do with these two references together. So think about what goes in between a first name and a last name. When you're typing your first name, when you're writing your first name, typing your last name, what goes between? Yeah, it's looking for something. It's looking for an operator. Someone mentioned, should we add an ampersand? That's part of it. So in between your names, you always, there it is, yeah, a space. All right, so by committee, we did it. All of that is part of the right answer. We need to put in a space. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce operators and some literal text. We're going to literally tell it to print a space. So to do that, we're going to put an ampersand in between. Now, if we do this, it's going to simply put in first name, last name with no space. So close, but not quite what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a literal string of text. So after the ampersand, you're going to type in quotation marks. When you do this, Quickbase is going to, again, highlight that in yellow. Not a problem. Go ahead and type a space and then another set of quotation marks and then another ampersand. So you are saying first name and literally give me a space and then go ahead and print the last name. When it comes to how you actually type this out, if it helps you, you can add as much space in between as you need. Just know that if you add a bunch of space between the quotation marks, it's going to interpret that literally. So here you go. I'm going to pop this into the chat. You can use that. Some folks, I think, had already guessed it too, or they didn't guess, they knew, but awesome. So this is some simple concatenation. You're using field references to say, go grab the value from this and from that. And you're also using operators for ampersands here to join with a literal string of text, which is just simply a space. So for anyone who created their first formula field here, not so bad, right? Pretty good. Now, this is all well and good, but maybe we don't know that it's actually going to work. So we need to go test and evaluate and make sure it did the right thing. Go ahead and click save when you're ready. And thank you, person in the chat. You were responding to someone else. Yeah, the plus operator is just for calculations, unless you wanted a literal plus. For when you're joining things together, you would use the ampersand. So I'm going to zoom out slightly because I'm very zoomed in. I'm going to exit my settings. And now I'm going to go to the client's tables landing page here, just by virtue of exiting the settings. And if you look way over to the right, you're going to see a full name formula field. There it is. And if you look left to right, looking at the first name and last name field, and then looking in the formula field, or go ahead and just, you can open up one of the records if you want, you'll see that it's doing what we need it to do. If you want to test this further, you can click the new client button, and you can even see this happen live. You can add a new client. You don't have to actually add it and save it if you don't want to, but you can add a first name, like I'll just add myself here. Do we have this on the form? We don't. So we would need to add it to the form. But by simply right-clicking any one of these fields, you can choose add a field after this one. You can put your new formula field on this form to evaluate it. Yeah, great point in the chat too. You could also put a comma inside the quotation marks if you wanted to do like last name, comma, first name. Also totally valid. I'm going to add the full name formula to my form here. This is not required. I'm just showing you how to test and evaluate. Now, when I look here, full name formula is way over to the right. I'd probably want to move it somewhere else. But if I add my first name and then my last name, see way over to the right, that full name formula, it populates it automatically, just right there for me. So I can evaluate really quickly to see if it's working the way I want it to or not. So some pretty cool stuff, right? And that was, I think, fairly straightforward. Now, you need to know this stuff in order to create a formula like that, but this is your first foray in if you haven't created a formula field before. So congratulations on creating your first one. Let's go create another one so we can learn a little bit more about what these fields and functions can do. So for the next one, go ahead and draw your eyes back to the slide here. Oh, can you change the info in the formula field? Let me know what you mean by that specifically. You can update the formula if that's what you mean. So if you decided that you needed to change it in some way, you could always update it. You can also change the type of field if you need it to. And we'll talk about why you would create a different type of formula field in a few moments. But for exercise number 2, let's evaluate if vaccination is current or not. Oh, can you type into it? No, you can't type into that field. See that? You can't type in. Doesn't let you change it. So for the second exercise, is vaccination current? We're going to create a formula checkbox. So we're going to modify a field so that if a pet's vaccination date is beyond 2 years, the box is going to be unchecked. If it's within 2 years, the box will be checked. So let's go to the pets table and take a look at what that looks like. The learning goal here is going to be to understand how to perform an if statement assessment. So it's another function. We're going to learn how the if function can be incredibly useful as we start to learn about formula fields. We're also going to learn about a function called adjust year, kind of a secondary benefit. You might not use that one all the time, but fairly useful. And the benefits are going to be that pets are automatically marked as vaccinated or not, depending on if they are vaccinated or not. So some really cool benefits there. All right. So what we're going to do is go look at one of the pets. Let's go find a pet that was vaccinated more than 2 years ago. This will illustrate what we're trying to solve for anyway. So from the pets table, if we look at vaccination date, let's see. Who was vaccinated over 2 years ago? Gidget the dog is a poodle. Its vaccination was last in November of 2018. Okay, so we want to make sure that box way over to the right is vaccination current can tell us just right away, is their vaccination current or not? It'll also make making reports easier because we'll be able to simply say, show us all pets where the vaccination is not current. It'll be a lot easier than looking through all of the vaccination dates and doing the math in our heads, even if it's not that challenging. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to edit the properties of the is vaccination current formula checkbox field. Now, there are 2 ways, at least from this screen, for us to go and edit that field. One is to go into the settings. Another one, should you be interested, is to take your cursor and put it over the column header where it says, is vaccination current? When I do that, I get an option in this drop menu that says field properties. Let me do that again a little bit slowly, just in case the video is behind my audio. I'm taking my cursor, I'm on the pets table. I bring the cursor over to the column headers, specifically the one that says, is vaccination current? The 3 dots there is my menu for that field. So I'm going to click the 3 dots. And in the menu that appears below, I'm going to choose field properties. All right, and in we go. So here's what we're going to do for our formula. Now, this is a formula checkbox field. The formula part works exactly the same, but it's going to produce a Boolean yes or no. Or I should say binary, really. Binary. It's either yes or no. So in the formula, we're going to make it produce a yes or a no. And what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a new function called if. Now, here's how if works. I'm going to go ahead and put in what we call a comment here. A comment allows me to basically leave some notes without the formula interpreting that as code. So I'm going to do // You don't have to do this with me. Feel free if you want to, though. And what this is going to do is it's basically going to say, if today's date is more than 2 years after the date in the vaccination date field, then the box is going to be unchecked. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and make it checked. Now, all the same, we could always do it in reverse as well. And we could call this field something like vaccination expired. So that's what we're going to do. And for the formula itself, we are going to first introduce the word if. So you can type in the word if, and then an open parenthesis. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our cursor and we're going to put it in between the parentheses. This is where all of the calculation, if you will, is going to be done. This is where all the logic's going to exist. To give us some space, I'm just going to go ahead and use the space bar there. Now, you could always use enter as well. Totally up to you. Okay. So what we need to do is figure out if today is greater than 2 years from the vaccination date. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find in our fields and functions that menu from below, this option that says select a function. So when we were in here before, we were choosing field references. We will do that again, but first we're going to choose a function. And the function is going to be called adjust year. Now, you may not know to look for this. In fact, I only really started using this one recently, and I've been here 8 years. A lot of functions in there, as you can see. But this function basically says, this returns the date, which is y variable, years after the given date. So what we're going to do is we are going to type in between our parentheses and if here, we're going to type in adjust year and then another set of parentheses. In that second set of parentheses, we're going to have it do its calculation, its check, if you will. And from the fields and functions down below, we're going to choose vaccination date. You can always search for it if you need to. Now, if you're getting a bit overwhelmed with this, I'm going to give you the formula in a moment anyway in the chat, so you can just watch. So we're going to do vaccination date, comma, +2. Now, so what we're saying is give us whatever the vaccination date is plus 2 years. Now we want to assess if that date is still in the past, kind of working backwards here, then we need to either uncheck or check the box. So we're going to compare it to today's date. I'm going to take my cursor and put it in front of adjust year and type in the word today, and then an open parenthesis and a close parenthesis. I'm going to top it off with a greater than. There's a lot going on here already. This has gotten pretty complex, but stick with me here. I'm going to put in, right before the final parenthesis, I'm going to put in a comma, and I'm going to say false. So, whoa, what is going on here? Let me talk you through this one, because it might seem a little intimidating at first. We're saying if today's date is greater than 2 years out from the pet's vaccination date, then this checkbox will remain unchecked. Because again, the checkbox is assessing, is the vaccination current? So in this case, Gidget the poodle was vaccinated in November of 2018. Okay, so 2 years after adjusting the year, that vaccination date is November 2020. Is today greater than November 2020? Yes, it is. So we're going to not check this box. Now, the if function knows to just do the opposite because this is binary. But we could always, if we needed to, after false, if we just want that assurance, type in true, just in case. So here is your formula. If you've been waiting patiently for it, thank you for waiting patiently. There you go. So again, this is kind of one of those, this goes back to my cooking analogy here. I'm not expecting you to entirely understand this right away, but this is to show you how you can start to really get some pretty sophisticated logic just baked in automatically. It does take a little bit of work when you're trying to figure out exactly what it is you want to do in the most efficient way. That's why we have resources like the help guide, these trainings, and of course our care team here to help you out. When you're ready, you can click Save. Now, this is a great question from Rachel. What does the open parentheses after today do? It's funny. I don't think you actually ever have to put anything in there. It just literally prints today. That's all it does. Is it just says, oh, this is a function, and it's called today. Okay, we're going to print today's date. That's all it does. Of course, Brian, feel free to come in over the top if you have a different explanation. Brian here, teammate, actually trained me 8 summers ago when I first started. So I'm trying to pay it forward, Brian. And another question, why both false and true? You don't actually need it. That's just to show that if you want to, you can, but it's implied given that this is a true-false field because it's a checkbox. So we're going to click Save whenever you're ready. And if you edited this field the way that I did, it's going to take you into exit settings, or into settings, where you will then click exit settings in the upper left. So exit your settings. It should bring you back to the pets table homepage. And no, you don't need anything to signify the end of the line there. That's it. So now take a look through your list of pets. Go ahead and look at the check marks and look at the vaccination date. So far, it looks like all these pets here have been vaccinated, except for Gidget. So Gidget is out of compliance here. And again, if you wanted to see this working live, go ahead and edit one of the pets. I'm going to edit Caden the dog. Now, editing Caden's record here, I'm going to just play around with the data a little bit, and I'm going to change the vaccination date. I'm going to change it to 2019. Okay, vaccination still current. How about, what is today, the 25th? 5-26, 2019. Is that still current? It is. What about 525? Okay. What about 524 of 2019? Oh, it's not. So what's great about this is that you don't have to be changing things. Just as soon as this evaluates that it's true, it'll check the box. So if I leave this vaccination date as exactly 2 years ago at midnight, according to this app, wherever the app is located, quote unquote, whatever time zone you set it to, that box will uncheck itself. Pretty nifty stuff, huh? Yeah, so you had the same result without true. I took true out. So someone said that if they remove true, it doesn't work. So we'll want to check on that and just make sure, do you have a date in here that's definitely out of the 2-year range? And check on your formula again. So I provided the formula in the chat. Feel free to go dig that up again. I'll actually put it in one more time here. I'm going to go take a look here and say, I did take true out, right? Oh, I left it in. But it should be fine without it. Someone said you have to remove the comma as well. Yeah, if you didn't remove the comma. Though actually, yeah. So, oh, okay. That is new for me. So now I'm wondering if it's always been like that or something changed. Go ahead and add the true back in. Thought I would have understood the otherwise. This is the point of testing, right? You test just to make sure that you know what you know. So adding the comma and true back in gets it set up right. Okay, today I learned. But if it's, yeah, so. From here, you could also consider doing it backwards to say vaccination lapsed, and then you just evaluate it the other way around. Let's move on to the third exercise now. I'm just looking at the time, trying to remember exactly how much time I have. I have until top of the hour, quarter past. Let's move on to the next one. So this one is for shortening a notes field for your reports. So if you train your eyes back over to the slide deck here. Oh, and interesting, someone in the chat basically just did the inverted version of that formula. They adjusted it so that it today is less than that calculation of 2 years out from the vaccination date. Cool. Okay, so maybe that's even a better way to do it. There's multiple ways to do the same thing. Sometimes one way might be better than the other. But for exercise number 3, let's create a formula field that just simply copies the first sentence from a text field that might have many sentences. So what am I talking about here? Go ahead and head over to your visits table and let's take a peek. So from the visits table, there's a field called notes. And it says visit summary notes, to be specific. There's only one visit here where notes were added. Now, there are several sentences in this description here. So what if we just wanted to say, all right, Cape Cod Pet Care Technicians, your first sentence is going to be the most important sentence. So you're going to summarize in that one sentence how the visit was. Then you go ahead and explain whatever it is that you want to explain. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new field. We're going to call it notes, shortened for reports. And it's going to take just the first sentence. So you're going to learn another function here. The learning goal here is to understand a function that transforms data. There are a lot of those. You're going to learn one of them here. And to observe another opportunity for an if function. The benefits being that long text fields that make reports challenging to read can be summarized succinctly. So we're going to go into the settings of our visits table. The settings gear is over to the left. Once you are in the settings of your visits table, again, it never hurts to just look in the upper left and make sure you are on the proper table. You're going to look for the fields on the left. You've got 33 fields, and you're going to add a 34th now. So click New above your fields. This new field, you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it Notes, and in parentheses, I'm going to say Shortened for Reports. And the type of field that I'm going to use is formula-rich text, although we could probably get away with formula text as well. All right. When you're ready, click Add. Just like last time, this field's going to appear at the bottom of our list of fields, our roster, if you will. And we're going to click on the field itself so that we can add the formula. So here's what we're going to do. And of course, I'm curious, does anyone need this particular field? Has anyone been looking to create a field like this? Is this going to be useful for somebody in the immediate future? If not, I hope you find a way to use it or find some use from it. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to click into the formula input box. Now, there are two layers to this. First, let's take care of just understanding how to shorten and transform the data. So there's a function. If you choose from your fields and functions to select a function, there's a function in the list called left. And there's actually two versions of it. We're going to look for the second iteration of it. And it's a technical description, but it says this returns the left part of a text value up to, but not including, the first occurrence of a delimiter character. What does that mean? Look at the example down below. For example, if we say, look at ABC/DEF and give me whatever is left of the slash, the result will be ABC. If we look at the text string Michael Smith and we say the delimiter is a space, the result will be Michael. So what does this mean for us? Here's what we're going to do. Close your window here. You're going to type in left, zoom in just a little bit, and an open parenthesis. So left is your function. Within the two parentheses, you're going to go ahead and put in the field. So again, choose from your fields and functions. We're going to put in the field visit summary notes. So we're telling it we want to take just a portion of the visit summary notes, and we need to now tell it what to look for first. So this is going to be interesting. You're going to, after visit summary notes, but before the parenthesis there, type in a comma. And now we're going to introduce the delimiter or delimiters that we can use. So sentences don't always end the same way. Sometimes they end with a period or a question mark or an exclamation point. And far be it for us to tell everyone to use the same punctuation. So we're going to use a quotation mark. It's going to give us two sets here. And we're going to say period, exclamation point, question mark. So if you find any one of these three in the visit summary notes on a record, go ahead and just stop reading right there. All right. How do we feel about that so far? I'm going to go ahead and put that into the chat. We're not quite done, though. Not quite done. Oh, and a question from a few minutes ago. The yellow vertical bar, I think you're probably referring to when we were looking at the list of fields. That's just a new field that you added. It's just supposed to kind of train your eyes to that new field there. So here's your formula so far. Why don't we go take a look at how it looks? Let me know what questions you have, of course, but I'm going to click Save. We're going to head back to the Visits table homepage. First, we have to exit our settings. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so the notes shortened for reports worked for me here. But is there something more that we could do? Look at all these other records that don't have any notes. Now we could try to force people to enter notes. So we could require that. We might have a lot of visits in here that didn't have notes left when the visits happened. So can we really force people to go back and enter notes for visits that happened months or years ago? So another thing you could consider, this is completely optional, but you could edit that formula field for the shortened for reports notes field, and you could add in some additional logic. So I'm going to go and put my cursor over that new field, that column header, and I'm going to choose field properties. And the next thing I'm going to do, I am going to expand my formula, and I'm going to add in the following. I'm going to say that at the top here, if, open parenthesis, the visit summary notes is equal to the quotation mark. So if it's blank, comma, I want you to print no notes left for this visit. So what I can do is I can transform this so that I'm now interpreting what to do if someone doesn't leave notes. All right. So let's take a look at this. A visit summary notes is blank. No notes left for this visit. Don't need that parenthesis there, so I'm going to take that out. So here's my updated version. There you go in the chat. So I've shown you a few instances of how the if function works, but I want to break it down for you in a moment too, so that you can see exactly how it works. So back to the visits here. Let's take a look at that report now. Okay, so now the rest of them say no notes left for this visit. But the one that did have notes left printed the first sentence. So the if function works like this. I'm going to give this to you in the chat. It basically says if condition is met, print result. Otherwise, print other result. And how does it work? Well, you don't have to just go ahead and copy and paste that bit that I gave you in the chat here and hope that you'll paste it somewhere useful and save it for later. When you go and look at any of your formula fields, you can look at that list of functions. So when you're creating or editing a formula field, click in the input box and choose from your fields and functions. And when you go to select a function, you can see a reference to all of these. Now, Brian, I haven't been able to look at the Q&A fully here, but I'm pretty sure someone in our team here created a really cool reference app for formulas and also another app for a formula builder. So if you wanted to share any of those links, I was going to go dig those up, but some really cool stuff a certain someone around here created for the benefit of Quickbase builders.
Absolutely. I'll drop it in the chat in just a minute, Ben. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And if it wasn't obvious, Brian, I believe you built both of those apps, right? Or at least one of them.
I did, yep.
That's right. But in the meantime, when you're in Quickbase, you can always just look at these functions to see exactly how they work. So the if one is one that you might end up using a lot. So if Boolean condition 1 is met, give this result. Otherwise, do this other thing. And it tells you exactly how it works and then gives you a few examples. All right, and Brian has dropped one of the apps in the chat there. So if you click on that, I clicked on it, but it loaded it on my other screen. So I'm going to bring it over here. This is an app that's open to the world. Anyone can see it. Look at all these formula functions here. There's a formula functions table and a sample formulas table. So it's really great to learn from examples and then copy those examples and fit them into your use case. It's a great way to learn. Someone has it saved in their favorites. Like you already had it before this. Yeah, it's a good one. And for anyone who hasn't yet, you might want to add this to your favorites. Yeah, and thank you, Brian, for creating this in the first place. And then the other one. I
thought you were talking about the other one, Ben, but that's okay.
Oh, I was talking about both of them. I'm glad you gave us both. This is a newer one you created, right? The automatic formula machine?
That's right.
So feel free if you want to talk about this one, but my quick summary about it would be, if you want to get a kind of a recommendation for how something could be done, this is a great way to build a conditional formula, build an image thumbnail formula, build a text style formula if you're looking to style your text using some HTML formatting. So a lot of cool things. Brian, feel free to come over the top if you have any further description, but really cool stuff.
Sure, absolutely. Just very quickly, then I'll say that these three items on the page here are three very popular types of formulas that we see our builders plugging into their apps. And so when you click on each one of these, you get a simple data entry form that has a kind of point and click interface where you kind of answer some questions about what kind of formula you'd like to build. And then at the bottom of the page, it'll actually give you the formula code that you can paste into your app, and then you can customize it afterwards if you want to do anything to tweak it.
That's amazing. Yeah, really cool stuff here. So if you want to learn how to adjust, let's say introduce a conditional, like an if, to one of your apps, this is a great way to learn how the experts would do it. And yeah, let me go back and just share that link with you again here. There's a lot of excited questions in the chat too. So team, if you're able to take a peek at those, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I'll be able to get to them all, but there's the app for you. Yeah. All right. So cool. Thank you, Brian. So for our final example here, let's take a look at, you can save, exit your settings wherever you were in your workshop app here. For the final one, we're going to work on math. So for these visits, we're going to get subtotal, tax rate, tax amount. If we have time, we're going to add a discount, and we're going to get a total as well. So we're going to do some formula numeric fields. So we're going to create several formula fields to calculate financial values. And the learning goals here will be to understand calculations using operators and field references. Observe additional opportunities for the if function once again. The benefits being 100% accurate calculations as long as we build our formulas correctly. It is easy enough to hit minus instead of plus. So we'll want to take care and check and evaluate, make sure that the math works out right. And we can automatically apply discounts for milestone visits if we choose and if we have time. I believe we still have 18 minutes if I'm not mistaken. Let's get going. So first, let's just open up one of these visits that already exists and take a look at what fields we do have and what we need to work with. So I'm going to open up this visit for Corey the dog. Now, this visit here looks like it was for pet sitting for 3 hours, and the service rate was $20. Now, I've done some work ahead of time in this app to try to make this a little bit easier to use. Go ahead and edit this record, though, so that you can see some of the fields that are working behind the scenes. In the upper right quadrant, it's not really upper right corner, but upper right quadrant, I'm going to click Edit. And there's some form rules at play here. What are form rules? That's for another session. But basically, I've formatted this form so that if you choose the pet sitting service, we then introduce to you a field for the number of pet sitting hours, up to 12 hours. Now, if you switch the service for overnights, now you see the fields change around. Basically, we need to do some math. If it's an overnight service, we need to take the service rate, multiply it by the number of overnight days, right? So how many overnights for this visit? If it's pet sitting, we need to multiply the service rate of $20 an hour by the number of pet sitting hours. If we're going to need an if function, aren't we? So let's first introduce a subtotal. Now, if you haven't seen this little trick before, I'm going to give you another trick, but I want to add a field, and I also want to add it specifically to a certain part of my form. And I want to do it all in one go. If you haven't seen how to do this before, I'm going to show you how, because it's really cool. In that first section for the visit details, take your cursor and put it over whatever the final field is in that row. For me right now, because I have the pet sitting service chosen, the final field in that row is service rate. So right-click where it says service rate. You're going to get this right-click menu here. Super useful. You're going to click the option that says add a field after this one. See that in the list there? You have two options to add a field. You want to choose the one that says add a field after this one. This is going to take you away to a different screen. And on this screen, you might have to tell your browser to leave. Pardon me. On this screen, you get to choose from a list of fields that already exist. But we want a new field, right? So you're going to scroll all the way down in your list here till you find, create a new field at the bottom. Pardon me for a moment while I take some water. Now, when you choose to create a new field, you can now provide the field label. Wasn't enough water, apparently. You can provide a field label and then choose a field type. So this is going to be the, what do we want first? Subtotal is important, but do we want to do tax rate first? Yeah, I guess we want subtotal first. So subtotal, we're going to choose a field type, formula numeric. So in the list, again, you're going to scroll down beyond the break and choose formula numeric. All right, with me so far? We're going to click done, though we're not totally done because we need to actually design the formula now. This is going to bring us back to our form. We're going to have subtotal just over to the right, kind of doing nothing because we need to tell it what to do. So there is subtotal. Take your cursor, put it over subtotal, and you're going to right click. This time, you're going to edit the field properties for this field. So choose that bottom option. Again, you're putting your cursor over subtotal and you're right clicking and you're choosing to edit the field properties for this field. Now this one's going to be pretty basic. It's just math. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down. If you're really zoomed in like me, that's a lot of scrolling. And in the formula itself, find that input box. You're simply going to put from the fields and functions, the service rate and then, oh, we have number of overnight days and number of pet sitting hours. So it sounds like we're going to need to introduce an if function here, right? Okay, so we've got a little bit more to this than maybe I let on. So we need the service rate times the number of overnight days if the service is overnight, and times the number of pet sitting hours if it's just a simple pet sitting service. So this is another opportunity for our if function, right? So, okay, here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and take the service rate and just use the enter key to move it down, right? Return it down just a little bit below. We're going to introduce an if function. We're going to say if, and then we're going to type an open parenthesis, which will give us the closing parenthesis as well. We want to first assess if the service is an overnight. Well, we could do the other one as well. We just have to do one and then the other. So from the fields and functions, I'm going to choose service. It's up at the top. If service equals, quotation mark, overnights. This is the condition part of the if statement. I'm just going to put a / at the bottom to comment and show you what I'm doing. I'm saying if condition exists. So we're assessing a condition. A comma is our delimiter to say that's the condition. The next thing is the result. So what result do we want to produce? We want to do comma the service rate, an asterisk for multiplication, and we want to choose the field number of overnight days, because it would be like number of overnight nights, whatever, number of overnight days. So if the service is equal to overnights, then, comma, we want to multiply the service rate by the number of overnight days. So we can continue this if function, this assessment, by saying, comma, if the service is equal to pet sitting, comma, service rate, asterisk, number of pet sitting hours. See, a few things to be careful of here. When you're introducing strings of text, especially when you're using if functions or any sort of conditional functions, this is going to look for quite literally what you just typed in. So can anybody see a potential problem with my sets of literal strings, of literal values here? Because I see one that I didn't even mean to type, but it's a good teachable moment here. So here's what I missed. Oh, someone sees it. What do you see? Ha ha ha, that's right. So it's literally going to look to see if this service says space pet sitting. Spoiler, it doesn't. So this formula wouldn't work the way I want it to. So let's close that up. I'm going to give you the formula itself. I will tell you in full disclosure, full transparency, I spent probably a year fumbling through formulas as I tried to get more and more and more involved with coming up with new formulas. But every time I tried something, I learned something. So when I say fumbling through, I mean I would just accidentally put the comma on the wrong side here. Right? Oops, why doesn't it like this? Something like that. It's little things. All the little things just make a difference. But every time I went to create a formula field or adjust it, I learned something new. So stick with it. That's going to be our formula. A couple things to look for when it comes to numeric calculations. By default, Quickbase is going to offer to display a total of this field in reports. So look up above. See where it says totals and averages? I would probably uncheck that box unless you actually want it checked. And down below your formula in the section for display, you may want to take off decimal places or reduce it to 2 if this is money we're talking about. And you might want to display this as currency instead of a simple number because we're talking about money. So go ahead and click Save whenever you're ready. We have the subtotal. Good question. Do you need to have it checked for pet sitting after you checked for overnights? Could you leave that out, and would it default to the pet sitting formula if it didn't see overnights? I believe it would. I think the way I think about it is, are we planning on introducing even more services? I like to be inclusive, even if it means a little bit more typing up front, just to be very, very specific. But I do believe that you could probably omit it, technically speaking. So now we have the subtotal, and if you play around with the number of pet sitting hours, you'll see the subtotal updates. If you play around with the service itself, whoops, that's not a number. There we go. You'll see that this updates as well. Pretty cool stuff, huh? Next thing we need to do, though, is get the tax amount and the tax itself going. So let's right-click where it says subtotal, and we're going to add another field after this one. This time, we'll add the tax rate. Now, what's cool about formula fields, too, is that you can also just assert a specific value all the time. What does that mean? Go ahead and add a new field for tax rate. Make it a formula numeric field, and I'll show you what this means. Anyone know what the tax rate is in Massachusetts? I know there are people from Massachusetts sitting in on sessions today, so someone here can tell me. I used to live in Mass forever, so I know what it is, but I have a follow-up question for you there. When you're ready, go ahead and right-click on tax rate, by the way, so that we can add the tax rate. The answer is the tax rate in Massachusetts, even though I haven't been there for 3 years, yeah, 6.25 as far as I know. Thanks, Brian. What was it before 6.25? I'm going to go ahead and just tell you it was 5. And that changed, I think, in the summer of 2009. Now, what you could do if you want to introduce a tax rate is just simply go ahead and put in what the tax rate is. It's really that simple. You just put in the number, and it will always plug that number in no matter what record you're looking at. So in this case, we would want 0.0625. But what if the tax rate changes tomorrow? Well, you can use an if function to say if the service date or whatever the visit date was before the date that the tax rate changed, go ahead and use this tax rate. Some cool stuff. All right. So 0.0625, again, just to do a quick check, you definitely don't want to display a total of this field in reports. That would be very not helpful for you. And down below, showing it as a simple number is probably fine. You can go ahead and click Save. So now you have a tax rate that just always says 0.0625. So now we need to multiply the subtotal by the tax rate to get the tax amount. So right-click on one of those new fields, it doesn't matter which one, and you're going to, again, add a field after this one. Once more, you're going to add a new field. Is this a new learning for anyone, by the way, how to add fields directly on a form? Kind of a nice shortcut. I'd be interested to know if it's new for anybody. We're going to do tax amount, and tax amount, again, is going to be formula numeric. So this is sort of like a sequence of dominoes. One affects the other here. This is some light automation at play. Ah, so this is new for some folks. Awesome. Cool. I hope it's useful for you. You can always go and customize your form later too, the way that you traditionally would to move things around. Like right now, we've got a bunch of fields on the same line, and we might want to change things around later. So for the tax amount, you can right-click tax amount. From that right-click menu, you're going to choose to edit the field properties for that field, and you're simply going to multiply the subtotal times the tax rate. So this one will be nice and simple. I would not display a total of the field in report, so uncheck that box. And for your formula, simply choose subtotal, asterisk for multiply, times tax rate. Boom, done deal. Again, financial figure, you probably want to go down below to the display section, set the decimal places to 2, and set the display as value here to currency. And then click save. All right, okay. So let's see. Tax rate, tax amount, does that look right? 6.75%. Yeah, looks right. Okay, so let's add them together. Let's get our total. Right-click subtotal. Choose to add a field after this one. You're going to create one more new field. You're going to call it total. It'll be the cherry on top. Scroll down and make it a formula numeric field. You do have to set the decimal places when formatting as currency. If someone with some sort of finance-related degree could probably tell me why that's important. Probably has to do with rounding. But yeah, you do have to set it otherwise. You might not always want to. Again, someone with a financial degree of some sort, accounting, whatever, can feel free to come in and tell me what's what with that. But I'm going to right-click on total, and I'm going to choose to edit the field properties for that field. And I'm going to say for the total, well, I don't want to display a total of this in report. Well, maybe I do. It's up to you. We're going to do the subtotal plus X amount. And again, we're going to set the decimal places to 2 and display as currency. And that's it. So that was a lot of solving and solutioning for just one quick session there. Look at that. Now, just to give you a little bit of vision creation for what you could do in the future, what if you wanted to discount for milestone visits? Well, I've done some pre-work here already where we basically track how many total visits a client has had across all of the pets that they might bring in. So what if you wanted to discount for a first visit? Well, you could just simply modify your total and say, if client's total number of visits is equal to 1, do this math, but then multiply it by 0.8 to give a 20% discount. So some pretty cool stuff there. The if function is one of the biggest takeaways, I would say, from this session here. So just to do a bit of quick review here so that we know what we went over and why we went over it, I just want to step back through the slides here. And then I also want to speak to Brian's points here. But just a bit of review here. The learning goals were to help you understand the difference between formula fields and manual entry fields. So I'm hoping that if you weren't comfortable with that concept before, now you understand manual entry fields, you type in. You choose from a list, you choose from a calendar. You check a box. Formula fields, you design logic so that the value populates itself. I'm hoping that you can now start to recognize where these formula fields could be used. So I guess a quick show of, we can't do hands, but a quick show of yeses or nos. Do you have some apps where you think you could start to introduce some formula fields to save yourself a little bit of time? Love to know if I've helped you out there. And I'm hoping that you feel comfortable now creating some of these basic formulas for performing calculations or doing some transforming text, or maybe even doing some of the conditional assessing. Hopefully you feel confident that this is stuff that you can take on and you can start to do more learning about it. Next month, we're going to be doing a more advanced live training. So if this stuff was a little bit easy for you, well, step into the ring with the advanced formulas on June 24th. Daniel Callahan will be leading that one. I will be there to help out. We'd love to have you there. And ideally, it's the first of many advanced formula sessions to come. Oh, I didn't want to close that all together. We just want to know what you want to know. So we're going to start with this here. We're going to introduce more as time goes on based on your feedback. Brian mentioned, by the way, for the financial question there, the decimal places aren't required, but depending on your calculation, you may have more decimal places than you want. And in that case, you'd set it to 2. Exactly. So a couple things to take away as well. If we look at the slides again, we talked about some basic stuff like how to do text concatenation. Let me go back here. There we go. Text concatenation, how to do text formatting, how to calculate time elapsed. We calculated some math, and we assessed using if and then else conditionals. So just a brief introduction, like a cooking class. I'm not expecting you to all be expert chefs now, but what I'm hoping is that you want to go back to the kitchen later and try this again. So I hope you're feeling more enthusiastic about using some formulas. There are a lot more automating functions and features in Quickbase, including pipelines. So pipelines is definitely a step up. They both have their merit as to when and where you use them. But if you want to learn more about either of these, you can always check our Quickbase University at university.quickbase.com. Plenty of self-guided, self-paced, do-it-on-your-own e-learning, as well as live training presented by yours truly and other trainers. You can always also go to help.quickbase.com if you'd rather just read the manual. So thank you, folks. I'll stick around and see if there are any questions I can ask. I know that this session does close down in 7 minutes. Thank you, Beth. Okay. So yeah, in 7 minutes, we get the boot. But I'll stick around if you have any questions. If you don't have any, then I really appreciate you showing up for this session. I hope it was a good use of your time. I hope to see you again in later sessions this week. Otherwise, have a great rest of Empower. Let's see what questions you got. What do we have here?
We've been answering some questions kind of throughout the session, Ben. I don't know that we have any that are left over, but I would definitely encourage anyone, if there's anything else on your mind in these last few minutes, just let us know.
Oh, and yes, I should say thank you. You just jogged my memory, Brian. Let me skip to this final slide here. If some questions should come up later, feel free to check out our Slack channel. So you can join the Quickbase Slack server, and you can join Empower 2021-sessions-Qs. So if you think of something as soon as we disconnect, which is usually what happens to me, I think of the thing I wanted to tell someone after we hang up, then go ahead and head over to that channel. And yeah, Brian, I know that you were going to put things in a parking lot, but it looks like you answered a bunch. It looks like the whole team answered stuff for me. So thank you for answering questions for us, team. Someone said, would it make sense to indicate that there were additional notes not showing with more or something like that? Did you take a peek at my other app? Because I actually have a previous version of this app that I made that does just that. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So yes, you could do something like that. This is a version of the app that I made back in March where I did that. In the interest of time, I kind of skipped through it, but check this out. In the visits table of this previous app that I made, that notes shortened for reports has something like a continued. Now, something really cool that you can do, Lisa Sawyer, who I believe has her own session again this year, did something really cool where she formatted this so that with that field there, she had a text as a hyperlink that took you to the record, but through a form that only showed the notes. So it was like, click here to view all notes. Really cool thing. I'm trying to remember where I could dig that up from. Probably from somewhere in Quickbase University, but a really cool trick of hers. Go take a peek here. Could you add a tooltip to display all text? Oh, not using our tooltip feature, but I have to imagine someone knows how to do that. Let me think about that one as I look through last year's Empower User Conference, where I think Lisa...
Ben, is this the DIY app that you're thinking of?
Yes, and maybe that was 2019.
She actually just updated it, it looks like. I just found the page. I just posted it in the chat.
Oh, you put it in the chat. Great. Yeah, so there was an actual app that it corresponds with it, right? Yeah, cool. So let's take a quick peek here. DIY session companion app. Oh, neat. Okay, yep. So try this app. Okay, so all right, it's called DIY session. Okay, so I'm not going to click that, but I am going to go to the Exchange and look for it. DIY. There it is. I wonder if she'll be surprised when dozens of people potentially grab the app before she actually does the session. So let's see. I wonder if she has it done already in here. Oh, thank you, Brian, for answering that one. Let's see. I have not looked at this app on my own yet, so I don't actually know what's in it. Oh, neat. Okay. List all. Vote note formula. Okay, that's probably not the right table. Sessions. Either way, we get the boot in 2 minutes. So let me know what other questions you have. Yes, it can be done. You would use a formula-rich text field. You'd have to... I don't know if I can exactly describe it here with 1 minute left. Starting to sweat. But it can be done. I'm tempted to say, check out from the Empower User Conference, Empower 2019, a session called, where was it? DIY, quick DIY solutions. Yeah. So I don't want this to make a bunch of noise while I'm here. So DIY. Nope. DIY. Yeah. I think this is it. So I'm going to pop this in the chat just in case. Volume is not on. Let's see. Did she show that toward the end? Or was this last year? Oh, is that it? Color code? No, that's color coding a Kanban report. I know it's in there somewhere. It must have been from last year. Either way, we're about to get booted, so thank you for showing up here. Sorry I couldn't get you that exact answer, but feel free to bring it over to the Quickbase Slack channel for Empower 2021 sessions. Again, my name is Benjamin. Thank you. Please fill out the survey that you will get later if you feel passionate in one way or another, or maybe middle of the road, whatever, however you feel about the session. Let us know if it was good, if it could be better, what we can do better next time. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of Empower. Thanks, folks. Take care.